The Lions are kings. We unpack the Chris Fagen fairy tale, and have we seen the last of Joe Daniher? And what next for the Swans and John Longmire after another failed grand final? This is Access All Areas thanks to Crypto.com. Well, it was redemption for the Brisbane Lions after last year's heartbreaking grand final loss to Collingwood. They are premiers in 2024 as I welcome in Damian, Barrett and Matthew Lloyd. And Damo, it wasn't as close as we thought that was going to be, was it?
It was embarrassing, and we need to really touch on that aspect of it throughout our chat this morning. But it's one of the great stories, the Chris Fagen story, in football of all time.
Storylines everywhere, Lloydie, because the kids were good too, weren't they?
Yeah, they were outstanding. Like, full credit to Brisbane. Sydney were disappointing, but Brisbane, I backed against them. I think the last three finals, and they saluted it every time. So, outstanding season.
Well, let's unpack the grand final because it was the second term where the damage was done, Lloydie. They kicked 7 goals to 1 and led by 46 points at half-time. The first flag, of course, for the Lions since 2003.
Yeah, I thought the scoreboard flattered Sydney at quarter-time. Charlie Cameron kicked the goal, which they deserved on quarter time to push it out to that 8 or 9 point margin, but it felt to me like a 20-point margin. Sydney just, when the ball was live, they were just too slow, too reactive, whereas Brisbane Lions looked dynamic. They took the game on, Sydney played safe, and the second quarter blew out. It wasn't a big surprise for me because I thought the difference in the styles of play in that first quarter.
And Damo too, a second time this century that a team has won a premiership from outside the top 4.
Yeah, well, 2016 was the time prior to that, Nat, and the whole dynamic has changed since the AFL introduced the bye after round or the completion of the home and away season, which they did on the back of that season being the first one, 2016. So I think there's a good study case now to have a look at that. But they were ultimately the dominant team, coming back from 44 points in a deficit in a semi-final and 25 points down in a prelim final.
So in 2016, late 2016 it was, Chris Fagen walked into what was a very broken Brisbane Lions football club, Damo, and then 8 years later he's taken them from wooden spoon to premiers. It's quite remarkable the way he's been able to turn this club around.
It is, Nat, and each of those seasons they learned something. They got more resilience about them. They got a game style that stood up last year on the big day in 2023, and all they did last year, Nat, was not win the game of footy. They lost by 4 points, but they knew if they got back there again, they were going to rectify that. And they then did set about to do that. And these scenes are just amazing, aren't they? The Lee Matthews embrace, the great friendship that they've got, the previous Brisbane Lions premiership coach, and the bond that he's got with those players. It was on show, wasn't it, when after 11 matches of this season, they only had 4 wins to their name, and he never lost hope, and he instilled that trust in those players, and he was rewarded with that faith and that trust he has in each and every one of them.
Yeah, the players see him as a bit of a father figure. Lloydie, let's get into the game because Brisbane really brought the heat and the pressure, didn't they, early on? They
did, and that's what you want to do. You want to try and, it's like an arm wrestler, and you want to see who's going to break first in a grand final. And there was even Charlie Cameron's, he's bobs up on this a fair bit. I thought he played a really selfless role through the final series. He got up nice and high, applied a heap of pressure, and even a chase like this by Wilmot, that is inspirational. Like, they're down by 2 goals at this point in time. And then after that, the wheel turned. Lohman kicks the first goal. And it was just, it was game over, really, after from that point. They kicked 14 of the next 16 goals. And they just had no answers at all, the Sydney Swans. Yeah, we'll get to the Sydney Swans in just a moment. But let's take a listen to their coach, John Longmire, because he went in with a game plan and, well, it just didn't work.
No, we wanted to obviously reduce the teasing distance that the players had, around closest to the ball. We wanted to reduce that teasing distance going in, and we didn't get that done. That was the plan going in. We didn't execute it as well as what we could have.
So for everyone watching, teasing distance means you've got to be close enough. So you look just to the left of the centre square. That's McInerney on Leicester. So the teasing distance is too big. And with this Brisbane Lions side, they'll make you pay. So this is where, the chip from Archie, that's again, where's Lohman's man in that situation? So that's teasing distance. This one on the 50, Ashcroft in the centre on the 50. So the teasing, Warner's got his hands on his hips, 20 metres off. So the teasing distance is too big. Lachie Neale gets it back. So I'm about to pause this again where it's Ollie Florin, who I thought, to me, was the worst player on the ground because of his lack of respect on Kai Lohman. It was really poor after the first goal, the second goal. He just refused. This is the third goal. And Ollie Florin refused to bumper bar him, put touch on him, and then Lohman goes in and kicks his third goal. After this, I was watching Ollie Florin. You know what he was doing? He was looking to young Roberts and say, Mate, he was wanting Roberts to go over and hand over and take him. Roberts says, no, he's not my man. You're on him. So they were the scenes that I was seeing when you talk about teasing distance, touch. They didn't want to do the work early in the game, and they wanted a bit in. I was surprised what a soft grand final it was from the Sydney Swans.
So the Lions had 51 inside 50s to the Swans 49s, but they generated twice as many score opportunities from that. Now, John Longmire was asked the question about ball movement and the like after the loss. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
I don't think we used our run enough from the start. We didn't seem to move to the level that we've been moving at, which is with the ball. We didn't use it well enough, and we think we blasted it away a bit too much. Kicked it, didn't use our numbers around the footy and blasted it, and then we're beaten at ground level, and they were able to get it back and go back through us, and a bit too easy.
What run and movement provides is for the forwards. So if they run and they move further afield, as a forward you can go left, you can go right. It upsets the footwork of the defenders. So that's what allowed, they were all at sea. McCartan got beaten a number of times. Rampy got beaten a number of times because of the movement. Whereas you look at this from the Sydney Swans, they became panicky in a sense with their kicks. So Heaney, you don't blast from the logos out on the wing because that makes it easy for defenders to intercept. So they were launching the ball long and high, and it made it easy for these Brisbane players to intercept the ball. So for whatever reason, they refused to put their running shoes on and run. They just wanted to dink the ball around, chip, and it made it very easy for Brisbane to defend all day.
One of the great storylines, Damo, from this grand final is that of co-captain Lachie Neale. We know that he has the 2 Brownlow medals to his name. The missing piece was a premiership medallion, and he went into this game with an injury, and he felt something snap during the game, but geez, he was phenomenal, wasn't he?
And he was just, as he's been most of his career, Nat, clean in those clinches. Look at these possessions and disposals that he's generating. He's picking the ball up below his knees regularly without any fumbling. The creativity, the bringing of other teammates into it, the communication, even without ball, with Ashcroft, who won the Norm Smith medal. We'll touch on him in a moment, but he was massive in this game, Nat, and to me he was the best player on the ground, and I'm not taking anything away from Will Ashcroft, who won the Norm Smith medal.
Could have gone either way, and Michael Whiting spoke to Lachie Neale. There's a piece on afl.com.au as well that you can read, but just how he was crawling to the bathroom at some points during the season, unable to walk, and the way he's been able to push through that injury has been quite remarkable. Let's talk about Will Ashcroft, though, this year's Norm Smith medalist. He's just 20 years of age. He came back into the side after round 16, Lloyd, after doing his ACL and sitting on the sidelines for last year's grand final. And geez, he is an absolute talent. Yeah,
he's a talent, but he's also one of the hardest workers I've ever seen come through. Coached against him for a number of years, and he's just different. He has a drive, a will, a want that's different to everyone else. And everyone thinks AFL players are all the same in terms of work ethics. They're not. Some go to length. Lachie Neale goes to lengths that other blokes don't want to go to with his touch and his craft.
Nick Dacos does.
Nick Dacos is the same. Bont's the same. Zach Merritt is the same at the Bombers. He's on a different level to everyone else. And Will Ashcroft has been on a different level to everyone else, and he deserves what he gets.
To think that was his game 31 only of a career. And he's been in the system, as we know, for 2 years only, but he's missed 11 months with an ACL. To do what he's done, we've talked about Dacos, but he's actually tracking better, even at this early stage, than Dacos, as weird as that sounds, having missed close to a season with a knee.
And of course, Will's dad, Marcus Ashcroft, is a 3-time premiership Lion, so it runs in the family, and he was a proud dad after the game.
Oh, it's been unbelievable, considering where Will was this time last year, to get himself back firstly, to get himself fit, and then he's just slowly built himself up to be as good as he can be, and to top it all off with a premiership and then a Norm Smith, it's hard to believe, and I think it won't sink in for a while. I won my first premiership when I was 30. Now he's won one at 20. So he's very lucky and very fortunate to be at a great club.
And of course, Levi Ashcroft coming to the club in 2025. So this is the voting and how it played out. It could have gone either way with Will Ashcroft and Lachie Neale, but Cal Archie was excellent early as well, Damo.
Yeah, it's hard to dispute any of that. I personally, Lordo, Nat, would have gone with Lachie Neale, but you can't knock Will Ashcroft getting it. That man on screen there, Lachie, 10 goals in the finals series, 4 in the grand final, 3 in the prelim final. He's a big game player, big moment player, big time player. He was outstanding with what he did on the game. And as we look at his performance, Lordo, I think other names that could have been in the North medal voting, Harris Andrews, Joe Daniher, Brandon Starcevic. I mean, I thought Jasper Fletcher's first half was also outstanding. There were so many good Lions players.
Yeah, there certainly weren't. Archie telling Fagen just a few weeks ago that I'm a forward. After being playing in such a range of positions, he went to the coach and said, play me forward, and it's certainly been a revelation for them. Speaking of some of the kids, Lloydie, I mean, we spoke about Will Ashcroft being in his 31st game. Well, for Kai Lohmann, it was game 35 of AFL footy, and he was the fire starter early, wasn't he? And then you throw in Logan Morris with 2 goals as well in his 19th AFL game. It's quite incredible what they've achieved.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was hoping he'd keep going, Lohmann, because I thought he was so critical to what they did. And I was hoping he'd get his 4th or 5th.
Well, there's his 3rd goal.
Yeah, and that's right. And look at the timing of it. So I was hoping, because I thought he deserved to potentially win a Norm Smith. He could kick 5 because of what he did early in the game. And just on Logan Morris, like he's a really good foil. And he's going to, if Joe Daniher does retire, how important does he become over the next 10 years for the Brisbane Lions?
And Kai Lohmann just watching some Surioli highlights before the game for some inspiration, which seems like it's becoming a bit of a trend. Of course, one of the big stories leading into grand final week was big Oscar McInerney, Lions ruckman, missing out after that double dislocation of his shoulder. But Darcy Fort came in just his 3rd game of footy this year, and he did a pretty good job. This was him after the game.
So I got a text from Fags Monday night that I would be playing. My next text is from Oscar. He wrote a long message. Most humble guy and incredibly sad that he couldn't be playing here today. But as a group, we sort of said if we could win it for Oscar, we want to do that. And he was very complimentary, pumping my game up. I'm not sure that was entirely true, but as I said, he's the most humble guy, and I'm happy for the team, and I'm sad for all that he could be wearing this, but he'll carry on like he's the most happy bloke in the world today, because that's the kind of guy he is.
It was seamless for the Lions losing McInerney going into that game to replace him with Fort. And Lordo, it's just why. It's proof why the clubs like to have the battle-hardened, seasoned players like a Darcy Fort on their list for that potential moment.
Yeah, and Chris Fagen handled it really well straight after the game. There's no ducks and drakes. He said, no, he's double dislocation. He's not playing. Pretty much said, we need to play another ruckman. Darcy Fort named him straight in on the Monday, and he did a great job.
Yeah, it's quite incredible, isn't it? Now, our Crypto.com bold play has to go to Eric Hipwood. Lloydie, talk me through this goal, because that was just ridiculous.
I think the thing is, the less you have to think as players, the easier it can be. Sometimes I think that's the case with Eric. I don't think he slips over, no time, he just kicks it.
Give him credit, Lordo. It's one of the goals of the season.
It is one of the goals of the season, and good on him. He cops a lot of flack, and that moment will go down in history, and Acker Manus enjoyed it. He and Acker were having photos still because he took him off for that goal he kicked at the game.
2005.
It was. 2005 against the Cats. Now, the future of Joe Daniher is up in the air as we speak. Damo, the news broke, I think, the night before that maybe this would be his last game, his 204th. What can you shed on this?
Yeah, what we've learnt since the siren, that is that there were certain people at Brisbane Lions aware of the situation, that game that he played on the weekend was the last. We're just having a look at what he did to help get the Lions there. Those last 2 goals against the Giants in that semi-final were just extraordinary in the season. They were extraordinary for that man on screen, Daniher, who then kicked the 4 in the grand final last year too. So he's a massive big game player. He stood up. I love this mark. He was there. He kicked 2 goals 4 on the weekend. He could have won a Norm Smith medal. He nearly won one last year. But back onto the future, Nat, it is unknown. They will attempt to talk him out of his decision to not play again. That's their right. And I would imagine they'll sit down pretty seriously, Lotto, to try and get him to change his mind. But right now, he has played his last game of footy, and that's coming from people inside the footy club right now.
And Lloydie, just looking ahead to 2025, I mean, the players who are out with ACLs, Tom Doedee, Lincoln McCarthy, Kitty Coleman and Darcy Gardner. Then you bring into the club Levi Ashcroft and Sam Marshall, who's an academy player as well. I mean, which of these players are going to make the Lions bigger and better in 2025?
Yeah, I think Levi Ashcroft is the one that will make them a lot better. Sam Marshall's another boy who got best on ground in the under-18s, so he'll sort of knock on the door as well. Lohmann's probably gone past Lincoln McCarthy. I think Jack Payne's gone past Gardner. So it's just a fantastic problem to have at the Brisbane Lions.
It certainly is. All right, we turn our attention to the Sydney Swans now. And for John Longmire, it was his 4th grand final loss. Damo, I just want to ask you about John Longmire now and where to next for him, because they've lost these 3 grand finals by a huge margin.
Yeah, no, it's a 225-point accumulation of points in those losing 4 grand finals. The last 2 by a combined 141 points. This is a professional football club which will not walk past this, and they can't. They need to have an old school type of review of this where everyone involved, officials, players, have to sit down, whether you have to watch every minute of it again, but to fail abysmally and embarrassingly now twice in the past 3 seasons on the big day, when you've got yourselves there and you've gone into the game with at least a 50-50 chance of winning. They started favourites on the weekend. Their game plan stacks up to a point, but not under the fiercest of pressures. And we've now got 2 bodies of work to factor into this.
Yeah, I was sitting there at half-time and I was watching all the monitors while I was in the 3AW box, and there was Emma Murray. Emma Murray was the person that was chatting to the Swans players at half-time, and that said everything to me about how she may do that every week, but seemed to be having a long chat to them, more than normal, about what needs to be done. And that was a whole mental battle that they struggled with again on grand final day.
So do we really have to question their mental fortitude?
Oh, absolutely not. And it's not an easy topic to have, particularly publicly these days, because we don't delve into this space. We're certainly not experts on it. I'm not trying to make out as though I am. But what I do subscribe to in some aspects of what they need to do now is to take an old school approach to this. The reinforcement of positivity, it gets you so far. But John Longmire's an old school person. I think Tom Harley is as well. I think there needs to be a bit of the old school approach to how they emerge from this situation. And he's got a contract for next year. He will serve that contract out. But that also is part of this conversation right now. What happens and how does it look beyond 2025?
And the first quarters, Nat, maybe that is a mental thing. So you have to get everything right to win on grand final day. Their talent probably helped them get out of jail so many times, but you can't get out of jail on grand final day.
And the balance between that positivity and that old school 360 feedback in the middle of the room, sorted out. There's somewhere in the middle that they need to go down the path of.
Certainly going to be a long off-season for the Sydney Swans, that is for sure. Now, the trade period and free agency period is upon us. It's that silly time of year. Trade Radio started this morning, so make sure you check it out on afl.com.au and the AFL Live app. Just quickly, Damo, who are we going to be talking about most this trade period?
Bailey Smith, we know we'll get to Geelong, but the Richmond Footy Club, how they transact on the Baker, the Rioli, the Bolton, the Graham situation. They're going to be getting a lot of picks, and they could have 6 picks inside pick number 25 or thereabouts in the national draft when it all flushes through.
Now, that is it for Access All There Is for another year. It's been great to have your company. We have an amazing team behind the scenes that I just want to call out. Jace, Locke, Jack Bennett, Mars, Mike, Dolo, Says, Dave and Alex. Thank you to all of them for helping us put together this show. And thank you two, for coming in every Monday morning. It's been great to have your company. Thank you so much for watching. Enjoy the footy.
Want to get all the latest footy news in one hit? From injuries to breaking news, the latest from the coaches, the Footy Feed team has you covered. Watch it now on afl.com.au and the AFL Live app or wherever you get your podcasts.